Today I want to talk about a more abstract, more general topic, uh, which is why the AfD does not advance anymore. It is losing in the polls, and what the actual dangers are, and how conservatives, as a movement or as an idea, can deal with the problem and where the threats are. Because now I think conservatives are heading in a wrong direction, and I want to address this. Before I give my own perspective on why that could be, I want to debunk the most general explanation right now, namely that the AfD is becoming too right-wing. There seem to be a lot of conservatives that are caught up in this media hysteria, as I've mentioned again and again and again on my posts and in a couple of earlier videos. We have a monolithic media, and it's not like in America. You do not have Breitbart, Fox, Daily Wire, Rush Report, The Place, and so on. And now there's a situation like in the UK, where you also still have some alternatives. You have the Daily Mail, and also you can look around on the media in other English-speaking countries. This is a privilege most Germans do not have. They do not speak English, at least not to the extreme that in their spare time, when they are tired after work, they would look into a matter in more depth in a different language. So even conservatives are caught up in the media hysteria that is drummed up by the left, and then they buy into this stuff. For example, people believe that Alexander Gauland, who is very pro-Israel, pro-Jewish, could have played down the Third Reich by calling it bullshit. I mean, this is an insane accusation, insane. So we have conservatives who just believe that the media hysteria has a true core, and of course, yes, okay, I can find a hair in every soup, and there are some nutcases on the conservative side. Of course, you do have. On every group, you have your number of nutcases. You do have some anti-immigration people who are anti-Semites, who are anti-gays, and so on and so on. Whatever your political wishes are, you can bet that you have some nutcases that absolutely want the same thing when it comes to this or to that topic. The media is then singling this topic out, and the nutcases that speak about this topic, pretending that everybody who wants a certain thing is all the same, and that you only should pay attention to the nutcase. They are very clever and very good at averting the attention from the nutcases that want the same stuff that the political left wants. Well, I can't speak about the hairs in the soup, but quite frankly, I do not want to get caught up in this and point to every single idiot within the AfD or some conservative movement. There's always some minor chat group or something that is highlighted by the media. I do not want to go into that nitty-gritty, knowing what the alternatives are like. I absolutely know how the Greens are. You have to put these things in perspective. That's why I say the right-wing nutcases are not the reason why the AfD is faring poorly. I would even go as far as to say that this distant cities, or as people call it, this attempt to distance themselves from nutcases and saying we have nothing to do with this group and with that group, and yes, we have some homework to do, and your accusations have all the true core, and never look at your side. Yes, we do have to deal with our side. This is actually just eroding trust. It would be better to say, well, yes, we do have some nutcases, but do your own homework first before you come back. So I see a bigger problem and that is the acceleration dynamic, the Christchurch voters. And the explanation really is, and this has been brought to my attention by the blogger Der Weitler, which is a very good blog. If you speak German, you may find a link to his blog in the description box. It's quite amusing. He said he had read a lot of other blogs and listened to videos and so on. He has come to the conclusion that there are a lot of people who want just to see the whole thing fail. So there is this mindset that if you cannot stop the Greens, which is now the predominant force in the political left, the Green Party, that's Jill Stein basically, and on steroids, people do not pay attention to her, quite rightly so. But that is, yeah, that's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. It's socialism, thinly veiled, and then some hysteria, climate change, panic. And they say if we vote the Greens and tell the pollsters that the Greens will make it, it will all come down crushing very quickly, and people will find repentance. They will understand it's dumb to abolish cars. It's dumb to power off the nuclear stations. Now, I do not believe that this is happening. And this mindset is what led the Christchurch shooter into his massacre. He believed that this war, that it just needs to be heated up a bit, and the sooner the tragedy comes, the better it can be cleaned up again. There's even a saying in German, better an end with horror than a horror without end. And this is this accelerator logic, the idea that if the Greens really just have power and do what they say, it will come crashing down, and everybody can understand why things happened. I see if we fall down that this can linger for decades, for many, many decades, if not hundreds of years. That is what's much more likely than we just suddenly understand why we made a mistake. I do not see San Francisco to understand that the traffic is bad and that the homeless people should be removed from the streets and put into shelter, maybe against their will. I do not see that LA is paying attention to the same problem. I do not see Paris cleaning up the mess that's now littering the streets. I do not see Berlin waking up. I do not see Venezuela waking up. I do not see any of these places really waking up. You have always a certain group of smart people who pay attention and who do wake up. But the majority of people will never, ever, ever wake up. People are very hard to convince of something smarter if they do not listen to arguments. If you just punish them, if the situation becomes a hardship, that alone will not give them the explanation of the misery. They need to understand the cause of the misery. If they are just presented with a punishment, they will find somebody else to blame. And it will most certainly be Brexit, it will be the tariffs, the trade war, it will be everything but their fault. And that's why it makes no sense to elect the Greens. And a reason why conservatives believe this, and particularly this is very strong here in Germany, it is because those who used to be conservative or used to be somewhat a little bit less lefty, let's say social democrats in the past, they had a lazy argument against communists. Until 20 years ago, communists were just these bickering, annoying basement dwellers who did nothing with their lives, did not help anybody, just demanded stuff, and so on and so on. And it was very easy to just play on or just deride their attempts to rebel, to deride rebellion itself, to deride opposition itself, because a lot of this, what we see right now, this anti-democratic hostility, is that these losers getting into power do everything against rebellious behavior as such and use the same lame arguments that they had been faced. This is just cynicism. And there were many other lazy arguments, and one of these lazy arguments was that these hippie ideas, these nonsense ideas, they were not just nonsense because they were illogical, but that these people had supposedly a strong utopia. There's this myth that the left has a utopia where just everything works very, very well, when this is actually not socialism. Socialism is that everything is a catastrophe, and then you need a dictatorship that hammers us into shape, and then after the dictatorship has an uncorruptible leadership, after that has turned everybody into a nice, sweet human being, then we will all behave so well that we all have to work less and everything will be swell. Until you come to that stage of paradise, which doesn't actually sound like a paradise, it sounds like the Stepford Wives. But unless you come to that that paradise, there is a lot of bloodshed that needs to happen until you come there. You need the initial revolution, and after that you need this hammering into shape, which is also a persecution of everybody who thinks differently. The dirty secret that nobody seems to mention is that some individuals, and particularly some pride individuals, do actually want that bloodshed. They are not out for an ideal. They seek the bloodshed for the sake of it. We have an innate will to kill. There is something that I should maybe make a video about this separately, because it's hotly contested. There are some people like this Crossman of the US military who claim that we have a killing inhibition. I do not see that at all. I think that he is misreading a lot of things. That there must be a debate about our innate proclivities, and it seems to me that gladiator fights and what we look at when we go to the cinema, it all has the purpose of filling a need, and that is something that evolution has created over many years. But if you believe that the left just believes in the goodness of human beings who will just cooperate in the very end, and that they just have to fall on their noses to understand what's rubbed into it, you basically just oversee that there are so many who actually do want that falling down into the mud in the first place, and who are not actually interested in that utopia that does not really exist. I have not met one single liberal or communist or anybody who believes that the outcome of this will ever be a honky-dory paradise-like situation. There is no utopia. This is the freaking most stupid myth ever. And as long as we believe in the good nature of socialism, we are just as naive as we claim they are. I think actually the left is more down to earth, more realistic side at this point. They are fanatics. They are in a strange warped ideology that is causing a lot of death and destruction and poverty and hunger, but they absolutely know this. They look at Venezuela, they see that they have advertised for it a number of years until it was no longer defensible. They see all these experiments, these little experiments, and they see them all fail. I do not believe that any of these leftists believe that this is all just a coincidence, and that the theory itself would hold the water, and it's just the realization that has some issues. Now, it's the theory itself that is ludicrous. You cannot turn society into a benevolent, non-personal problem, robotic Stepford wife society without eternal violence. The outcome would not be worth living. Everybody would commit suicide. And what's really funny is that the left pretends that they are the individualists, that they are for freedom, and the Stepford wives were kind of just very Christian. No, the Stepford wives is what you had in the Soviet Union. It's what you have in Venezuela. It's the wife that does not speak. It's the wife that only does what she's allowed to do. It's the wife that does not step out of line. The Stepford wives is actually in the realm of the possible. Poverty-struck nations are like the Stepford wives. It is not an ideal, and the left doesn't hold this ideal. So that was it for today, and I'll see you soon. Bye.